Hello and welcome to It's About Crime with me, Miss Kabo, the channel that discusses the who, what, how and why behind true crimes. Quick disclaimer that although I have studied psychology and I have a huge interest in it, I have no qualifications on the subject. All the information in these videos is from research and the professional opinions of police and psychologists. Please be aware that this video does contain disturbing content, so viewer discretion is advised. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Sally Ann Bowman. Those of you from the UK may have heard of Sally Ann, those outside of the UK may not have. Sally Ann Bowman was born in September 1987 to her parents Paul and Linda Bowman. She was the youngest of 4 girls and lived in Croydon in South London. She loved singing and dancing and entertaining, and her dream was to be on the cover of Vogue magazine. In January 2005, she actually signed with a modelling agency and she was working part-time as a hairdresser, so it seemed like her dream really could come true. On Saturday the 24th of September in 2005, just 2 weeks after she turned 18, she was getting ready for a girls' night out. At 6:05 in the evening, her sister picked her up and she turned to her mum and said, "Love you, Mum." Those were the last words her mum would ever hear her say. Sally Ann's on and off again boyfriend, Lewis Boston, was also out in another area of London that night. They were both worried the other one would be flirting and chatting with other people, so they spent most of the evening calling each other, texting and bickering. Typical teenage love. At around 10 PM, she meets her sister Nicole and they just spend the rest of the night dancing. She's having an amazing time and she's back at her friends by 1 AM. But by 2:30 in the morning, she wants to see Lewis. She calls him and asks if he will pick her up from Croydon town centre. Lewis is annoyed that she's asked, but reluctantly he does drive over to her. They argue all the way home and they spend nearly 2 hours bickering in the car right outside of Sally's flat. Lewis loses his patience and he leaves Sally outside her building. He sees her walk in and he thinks that she's safe and he just drives away. I honestly can't imagine how much that must haunt Lewis. At the same time that Sally was in the car arguing with her boyfriend at 3:30, there was another attack only 40 yards away. A woman pulled over in her car to use her phone and she had no signal, so she got out. A man approached her and she saw a knife. She held out a handbag believing that she was being robbed, and after saying sorry, he beat her over the head with a blunt instrument. The only reason she was saved was a passing taxi actually scared him off. She was given first aid and realised that she'd been bitten. She gave police an e-fit of her attacker, but it provided no leads. At 4:15, after Sally Ann has got out of her boyfriend's car, she's barely 10 yards from her front door and she's attacked. She's stabbed 7 times. Her screams are heard by a couple of neighbours. These neighbours do look out their window, but they see nothing. They assume it's either a domestic dispute or possibly even foxes, which is a common thing in that area to hear at night. It appears that the attacker left, but then he returns. How long he left for and why we'll get into a bit later. But when he does return, he very violently assaults her, sexually assaults her. He has intercourse with her body while she's laying there either dead or dying. And he even bites her very viciously. So after the attack, when Sally Ann is found at 6:30 in the morning, her family's informed and they're devastated, they're heartbroken. Lewis becomes the initial suspect, he being the last person to see her, having admitted that they argue, but he is actually eliminated as a suspect by DNA that was found on Sally Ann's body. The police say that her attack was frenzied, but a controlled frenzied. This person was not out of their mind. They knew what they were doing. She had severe defensive wounds, showing that she really did try to fight her attacker off. The police decide that they need to look at previously unsolved sex attacks. They've got a rough idea of what this man looks like due to the assault that had happened earlier in the night. He's white or light-skinned, aged 20 to 40, and given the attacks, he must be local to this area of Croydon. This is 22,500 names. The police actually set up voluntary DNA screening to help reduce these numbers, and 800 men come forward to provide their DNA. It doesn't lead to anything though. It's not until June 2006, 9 months after Sally Ann was attacked and killed, that Mark Dixie gets into a fight in a pub. He's there to watch an England game in the World Cup. The fight spills out onto the street and it's in front of the police. Dixie's arrested, he's processed, and he's swabbed for his DNA. 12 days later, it comes through. He is a perfect match to Sally Ann's killer. Police officers say when they went to arrest him at his workplace, there was no reaction. The policeman actually had to put his hand on his chest in the process of arresting him and said that his heart didn't skip a beat. It didn't change at all. He had no solicitor with him when he was being questioned by the police, and he answered no comment to every single question. There was no emotion, and there was no reaction even to images he was being shown of Sally Ann. There was nothing. At the time of the attack, Dixie was a father of 3. He was not with the mother of his children, but did have a partner. The night of the attack was actually his 35th birthday. He had been out with his friends drinking, he'd had pints, and he was a recreational drug user. He had done a couple of lines of cocaine, but his friends all say that he was lucid and stable. He was not off his head in any way. His partner didn't come out for his birthday that night, and his friend said that he was annoyed, he was frustrated that his partner hadn't come out to celebrate. Eventually, he ends up back at his friend's flat, and around 2 a.m, they go to bed and they leave him on the sofa. They say that he was still on the sofa when they woke up in the morning, like he hadn't gone anywhere, he hadn't moved. Now, Dixie claims to the police that he left that night to go looking for drugs. But they don't believe him. They think he left with the intention of attacking someone, of attacking a woman. It's also good to note that Dixie had actually lived in Blenheim Crescent in 2003. Now, Blenheim Crescent is where Sally Ann was attacked. That is where she lived. And he actually did live there previously, so he knew the area. He felt safe there. When the police are looking into Dixie, they find that he is actually a serial sex offender, and he's just deceived everyone around him. He has cases of indecent assault and exposure going back to his teens, and the police genuinely believe that it's so unlikely that Sally Ann is his first violent crime. You don't go from indecent assault and exposure to stabbing someone so violently with nothing in between. They found out that in 93 to 99 he was actually living in Australia, So the police sent his DNA to see if they could get a match anywhere, and they found one. In Perth, there was a lady who was stabbed 7 times and was also sexually assaulted while she was unconscious. Thankfully, this lady did survive. In February of 2008, he went to trial and he pled not guilty. He claimed that he wasn't the murderer, and the reason his DNA was on her body was he stumbled across her. He thought she was unconscious, so he just decided to have sex with her, unconscious. And he only realised that she was dead when he bit her and she didn't respond. As far as defences go, I don't think that's a great one. You're admitting to having sex with somebody who's unconscious. Well, interesting. But the police think that one of the reasons he pled not guilty, despite the fact that there was this damning evidence to suggest he was guilty, was gratification, was him wanting to relive his crimes. And the jury saw through him. It only took them 3.5 hours, and they found him guilty. And he was sentenced to 34 years in prison. In 2017, Dixie finally confessed. He said that he heard Sally Ann and her partner arguing after their night out. He was already angry after having an argument with his partner that evening, and then attacking the woman earlier, and that attack being disturbed by the taxi driver. His adrenaline was still pumping, and he said he could hear Lewis and Sally raising their voices. When she got out of the car, he just attacked her from behind. He put his arm around her face. She started to scream, and he began to stab her. Then he left the crime scene, but says that the reason he returned was because he'd left the knife and a screwdriver behind. He said during his confession that he became aroused when he returned to pick these items up and began tidying up her clothing, which is when he decided to have sex with her corpse, and then smoked some cannabis and just sat with her. At the same time, Dixie also admitted to 2 other sex attacks. In 1987, when he was 16, he'd actually bundled a woman into her car and assaulted her. He left her tied to one of the car doors and then set the front seat alight. Luckily, this woman managed to escape. And then also in 2002, he beat a victim with a knife sharpening tool and molested her on a set of stairs. I think when we look at this, Mark Dixie is a despicable human being. The fact that he attacked somebody because they were having an argument with their partner is disgusting. The fact that he would attack anyone for any reason is appalling. And the joy that he relished in making these families relive that situation in court, it's heartbreaking for them to hear those things. There has been a call for a national DNA register. As of now, it still hasn't happened. Sally Ann's mother is actually extremely vocal about trying to get that together. The police believe that had they had something like that, then they would have been able to find Sally Ann's killer within weeks rather than months. But thankfully they did find him. And Sally Ann lost out on an incredible life, an incredible future. And that's always going to be sad. And I hope that her family finds some peace knowing that Mark Dixie will be in prison for at least 34 years. It doesn't bring her back, and it doesn't take away all that they've heard and learned about that night. But she was a beautiful person with a whole world ahead of her. And the justice system worked in this case. They found the killer. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Thank you again. Take care.